head nodding up and down. So, this picture is a very telling picture. The East Beach restoration projects, we've been working since 2009 when I first took office on various stages of beach restoration. This image was taken with a drone. I believe it was around midsummer. If you zoom in, you can actually see that there are people playing tennis on a very precarious, close tennis court to the edge. But that is that even that perspective has changed in the last 6 or 7 months. We have been working with GEI as a coastal engineering firm. We've been engaged with GEI on various levels of projects since 2010. It's been a very long marriage. It's expensive to work with these coastal engineers, but they're necessary when restoring shorelines because all of these improvements require permits from the DEC. We started with our East Beach Seawall back in 2010, took 5 years to complete the wall. And as I do have some general bullets here and I have some visuals, which I'll scroll through and show you the timeline. But basically this slide just shows that it's been an ongoing concern from 2010 to present with various stages of restoration to our beaches, the sand and protective measures over the last 10 plus years. Of course, we started back in 2009 and 2010 with a nor'easter that took place in the fall of 2009. And then we had Hurricanes Irene and Sandy that completely devastated and destroyed our East Beach as we used to know it when we grew up here in this community. We lost the cul-de-sac at the end of the drive, and we almost lost the entire beach. We lost the retaining walls, the stairwells. We could not gain access to our beach for a number of years. And it took us many years and working with the DEC and the coastal engineering firms and $2.7 million to build the seawall that exists now to protect that shoreline. It's a beautiful wall. It's Stephen Engelbright, who's a geologist and one of our longest standing state senators, said it was the best seawall he'd seen on the North Shore. And it had to be built right to protect the parking lot, because without the parking lot, we would have absolutely zero access to our lovely East Beach. Shortly after the restoration of East Beach, we had ongoing concerns on both the East End and the West End. On the West End, you'll see up in the left corner in 2017, we had to extend the seawall and actually then build a concrete ramp so that we could have access to the beach. The beach at that end, there's a groin there, so to speak, and the beach sand continued to be scoured out so that there was a tremendous drop between the parking lot and the actual beach. So that concrete ramp had to be built, again, with a permit from DEC, more steel and rock revetment wall to protect that and to continue to give us access on the west side. Shortly thereafter, on the east side, you'll see the bottom picture on the right. The east end was completely destroyed as we know it. We used to have a little swing set there. You can still see that in the picture. But the storm came up, the high tides came up and over the seawall into the parking lot. And the only thing that we were able to preserve there was that gazebo, which still stands, but there was a tremendous amount of steel wall and rock revetment that had to be done on the east end. And those projects were from 2017 to 2019, both requiring DEC permit modifications. Of course, the big project that we started working with the town and the county on and the state was the repair of the jetty. The lower picture shows you the jetty as it stood from 2009 to just about 18 months ago. That jetty was breached, which means that the water was overflowing the jetty and taking all our sand and pouring the sand into the throat of Mount Sinai Harbor. The map above, all that gray area looks like kind of like a whale fish there. That shows you all the land, all of the beach that we lost as a result of the scouring of our beach and loss of sand. And you'll see the jetty wall was as proposed by the Army Corps of Engineers and the people who did this plan to restore the beach. That plan up there is from a document, I believe it's dated from 2010, when we first encouraged or did a study on what the impacts of the jetty on Port Jefferson Beach was. You'll see that this year, after the jetty was repaired, we finally got the sand dredged from Mount Sinai Harbor and replaced back on our beach. It was over 80,000, closer to 90,000 cubic yards of sand. After the jetty was repaired, Mount Sinai Harbor was dredged and our sand was replenished. And again, that only happened, I believe it was 2021, early spring of 2021. And we were very, very thankful to get all this renourishment of our sand back, having been displaced down the East Coast. And as sand is kind of scoured out with the tidal flow and everything else, it goes from west to east. And so we're very happy to get our sand back. The jetty and the sand restoration were paid for by the state and the county and the town. No taxpayer dollars were involved in restoring that. The other project that took place in the spring of 2021 was the rebuilding of the retaining wall. You can see the top left picture is the retaining wall as it existed, bowed out, broken, rotted out. And basically, I think we got there just in a nick of time to repair that wall coming down East Beach Hill from the start of the hill all the way down till you get down to the beach. This is a project that Village had to pay for. It was upwards of $400,000, and it was paid by the taxpayers through a bond anticipation note that the Village had to take out, and I think 2020 to get that project done. This is where we're at, folks. The Bluff as we know it, I'm going to describe this as phase one. You'll see at the very top of the image, right above the word phase, you'll see that concrete ramp coming down from the entry of the East Beach parking area. You'll see the beach, the width of the beach is diminishing, and you'll see that the Bluff in its entirety, that's about 700 linear feet that you're looking at of Bluff line, is being completely devastated, scoured out, and eroding. It's a very dangerous situation at this point. This has happened very aggressively, I think more so since 2017 to the present. I show this picture from 2017 again, because you'll see that there's a lot of vegetation on the hill. There was no real concern at that time for that level of erosion. You'll see the bottom left-hand corner was taken in September of 19, you can see what we call a king tide or a high tide rising, where the high tide comes in just to the bottom of that bluff now. And as a result of the pounding of the waves, we've lost a tremendous amount of vegetation. And the picture to the right with the rail at the bottom is taken from earlier. I believe that was the midsummer. I think Rebecca, you and I and Barbara were down at the beach that day, and that's from the early summer of 2021. And you can see now the tree line is lost completely on the Bluff line. And we have massive erosion going on, undermining the entire length of the Bluff. I'm going to go back to this slide for a minute, because we also talk about deforestation. When you have trees planted on the Bluff line, the root systems lose strength. And, there's a lot of reasons for that, but in revegetating a bluff, the tree is the last thing you want to plant. You want to get some grassing and other softer materials to take root. We had more impacts this summer to this issue. If you look at that storm system in the bottom, that was a rainstorm that we suffered during this summer months. You can see the tremendous impact of rain there. And I watched that storm hover around Port Jefferson for 5 hours, and that little black dot is Port Jeff, and that storm just swirled around us and it did a tremendous amount of damage. We're losing assets at the top of the hill. This is where the marriage ceremonies used to take place for the country club facilities. That whole entire area is now fenced off. The picture to the right shows the very top. You can see a little white pipe coming out of the top of the hill. That's now an irrigation pipe. I think that's part of this gazebo system, but you can see there's a line of hill that's being now scoured out. This undermining of the Bluff is going to have provides tremendous instability to the top of the hill. This is an aerial. It shows you the assets of the country club building facility and the tennis courts as they currently exist, and the tremendous scouring of the hill. And this has, again, gone at a tremendous speed over the last 2-3 years. A lot of things happening with the loss of vegetation on the hill. It becomes more unstable, and with the heavy rainstorms, The scouring, it just takes down, 5-6 feet of hill and tree at a time. You'll see where I point the arrow, you'll see, this is what I'm going to describe as that groin again. You have the concrete ramp is just cut off, but you'll see how much this undermining and the scouring of the hill is very closely getting to impact the roadway. Unfortunately, I did this presentation. I wish I could provide a better aerial, but I point your attention there because, we lose access to our beach road, we lose access to our beach. And so I just wanted to, this picture of the aerial is very telling of how closely all of our assets are to the top of the bluff. This slide shows the plan that has been submitted to DEC. We submitted plans back in 2016, had many visits on site with the coastal engineers, DEC. We went back and forth with DEC, modifying our plans. The arrow to the far left, we originally requested for the rock revetment and steel to come all the way down. And that point would be just beyond the 4 tennis courts. You'll see this big square box directly on, to the south of the arrow that represents the courts 1 through 4. We were denied that request. I believe that happened back in 2019. We modified the plans and the DEC approved the steel revetment wall to come just to the edge of the building. You'll see that second arrow where it says approved. The third arrow, again, I bring you back to that groin or where the concrete ramp is and the roadway. That entire area needs to be, the steel wall and the rock revetment needs to be now tied back to the bluff, and that area, that groin, completely reinforced and built back at this point in time before we lose any more material which impacts the road. We finally got our DEC permit this past June, and then we had to wait for the Army Corps to issue their permit, which only happened this past September. So part of the problem that we've had is while we're working with the coastal engineers and the state agencies, we keep losing material. We're playing beat the clock here. And at this point, this project as approved was placed out to bid. Just wanted to focus in a little bit more on the steel wall. The steel wall goes 454 linear feet. There will be stone in front, which is known as a splash wall. The steel wall will be pounded in behind that and reinforced into concrete. And that creates a brand new strengthened toe wall where we can then vegetate the hill. I'm going to go back a slide. You'll see the hard line is the steel. And as you come up the topography, all of that's going to be replanted. It's a lot of square footage to replant the entire bluff line. I'll scroll now forward a little bit. You can see the plan calls for a significant amount of what we call core logs, which will pin down the terracing of the bluff. There are erosion blankets included in the bidding. There's wood terracing, soil anchors, and tens of thousands of native plants, including many woody plants, beech and switch grasses, things that are soft, that the roots take place to help stabilize the soil and the sand that is there. And these are all native plants recommended by the coastal engineer. And they would help. We've also, interestingly enough, met with some engineers at the State University of Stony Brook, and they apparently have this new product where it's kind of like when they spray green and the grass grows faster. It's a product that will help these plantings take faster and quicker root to help stabilize this bluff. The picture to the right I actually took from a Facebook posting. Some of the local residents in Belterre are actually getting permits to stabilize their bluff line, and that's a picture of a private property in Belterre. Ours will look a little bit better than that, but that's gives you an idea of how that terracing will look. The project was put out to bid. We had 12, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we had approximately 12 bidders, which is a good number of participants in the bidding process, placing bids that range from 4.8 million to 6.2 million. The breakout of the cost factors, of course, of the rock, the steel, the planting is a significant portion of the cost. The mobilization of the heavy artillery that's needed to bring in those materials, and 3 or 4 months of labor to accomplish the job. This job at a $5 million cost would in a bond that's borrowed over 15 years at the present interest rate would be an increase of approximately $340,000 to the budget, which to an average household who pays approximately $1,400 in village taxes, that would be an increase of approximately $147 to the household. And that is if we do nothing other than sit back and borrow a bond and expect everybody to pay for it. We are doing a lot of things to mitigate costs. I'll go through those on a future slide here. One of the things we can do is ask for legislative relief to push out the debt service. I'm not a fan of borrowing money, and I'm not a fan of pushing out debt service, but this is a very costly project, probably the most expensive project that any sole municipality, village in Suffolk County has had to bear the brunt of, looking to stabilize this amount of hill. So that's the phase one. Phase two concerns how are we going to then make sure that we save the assets that are upland. Because getting the tow line and stabilization permits took so long, we lost so much more material at the top that there is a concern that now our building facility is approximately, the deck is approximately 30 feet from the bluff line. You can see the gazebo. I don't think the gazebo is even there anymore, but there's a hedge line, and you're getting very, very close to that bluff. Of course, we've canceled the tennis season for the oncoming year for obvious reasons. This picture is alarming, to say the least. So there's been a lot of talk about moving recreational facilities back. But again, I zoom in on the facility because right now the primary objective in phase two would be an effort to, well, let me move to the next slide. It shows, I believe, put a steel wall in behind that facility, pound it into the ground, and you'll see then the lower wall and the upper wall will then sort of pin each other back and prevent any further possibility of that building sliding down the hill. On the left-hand side, you'll see there's a red arrow that is a potential addendum or add-on to extending the steel wall if we feel we have to preserve assets to the left of our country club facility or to the west. And I think in actually some of the approved plans, the steel wall to the left actually also can extend, but how much money can we really spend here? These plans are still in process. They are not finalized. We are still, of course, waiting for that survey to be completed to the west of the country club facility and the upland survey, so that we can look at the topography to the west of courts 1 through 4 and explore all the drainage opportunities to help take the stormwater runoff from the upland and hopefully contain it somehow before it runs over the edge and continues that drastic scouring that we saw in some of the earlier images. As we've been discussing, there are some options to pull back some of our amenities as they exist, reconfigure tennis courts, abandon some tennis courts, introduce pickleball courts. The main objective is to pull everything away from the edge of the cliff. And again, this is part 2, and which is still under discussion and still yet to be determined because we don't have all the information we need to advance any kind of plan for the upland portion of phase 2 of the stability project. Basically, our status is on phase 1. We have gone out to bid. We would like to award that bid. The Board of Trustees will probably advance this to vote on a $5 million bond or so. The most reasonable bidder has been, we have been in contact with that contractor. He is holding that steel and the price of steel for us till the end of February. If we lose that bid and that material, which usually there's a 3-month lead on the steel of this type, we'll have to probably put the entire Bluff stabilization phase 1 project back out to rebid. Phase 2, as I said, we're waiting for some of the upland surveys, drainage plans. We're looking for a firm cost estimate for a phase 2 endeavor. I believe our administrator was out in the field meeting with the demolition company today, giving us a number on, what it might cost if we decide not to do a phase two and instead to demo our building in years to come and reconfigure assets on the upland side. We are also making applications and are in full discussion with our representatives, both at Senator Schumer's office. I'm engaging Engelbright. We were supposed to speak last week. We're speaking next week or this week, Thursday, I think. But we are in full conversation with the folks from FEMA for funds for hazard mitigation programs. There's millions of dollars out there. They believe our project is a perfect candidate for hazard mitigation to preserve a very significant village asset. What we're unclear of at this time is the timing. If we award the bid and we advance the project, are we still then eligible for a grant? Because usually with the other granting agencies that we've worked with, you have to be awarded the grant and then you sign the contract and then you get the numbers. Either way, we have to do the project and then you get reimbursed. That's how we've had to work all of our major capital projects, whether there's granting funds available or not. We have a very severe erosion issue, folks. It is not letting up. This is a picture taken by Trustee Laux, I want to say about 2 months ago, maybe. It shows that obviously we were very, very fortunate to get that one last season out of our tennis membership. But you'll see that that full length of fence, which, and the lighting is all now taken down. We have a very severe erosion problem, folks. It's not going to go away. It's going to continue. And at the rate that it has gone in the last 3 years, we may be looking at losing, a lot more than what we have lost and the next few months at the rate that Mother Nature is going. So I wanted to share a little bit of the progress of where we are in the storyline. I think the board knows. I've been sharing this with them. We had a work session on it. I'm very up in the air. I think we were contemplating waiting for phase two to come in and put the package together. At this point in time, folks, I'm really concerned about, if we don't do our tow line, we're going to be in real serious trouble a lot quicker than we anticipated. So with that, I kind of want to stop sharing my screen because it's kind of scary and open it up for conversation to the board or general public for people to weigh in. And I always have silence at this point. I love it. Brian, what did you think of that?
I mean, it's Mother Nature at its worst, right? It's quite a compelling presentation on the balance of preserving the asset and how it's squarely falling on the shoulders of the smallest level of government, being the village. It's almost unfathomable that it's our asset that it's happening to, and we're responsible for it. But I do hope that, and I keep my fingers crossed that there's going to be federal and at least federal money, maybe state money from Albany as they're having good budget times. But hopefully Senator Schumer's office will get back to us. And that sounded positive, the conversation and dialogue that Joe and I were having via text and email with their office, and you, Mayor, as well, on, with them on some of the possibility for grants. So that would be great. But the time to act is definitely now.
Yeah, I think, I want to assure everybody that I've been having really good work sessions with Denise and Joe and Barbara, looking at the budget and really taking out my pencil and sharpening it. I am committed to not allowing the full burden. We're just not going to sit back and raise everybody's taxes. That's not been my style. That's not how I've done things in my 13 years. But I feel very strongly that this tow line needs to be addressed. Stan, what are you thinking? You're on mute.
I have a lot of thoughts about this. I'm not 100% sold on the idea of going ahead with that tow line right now. We're talking about 5 and maybe up to $10 million when we get done with the upper portion. And with that estimate that came in on demo, maybe we're going in the wrong direction.
Well, tell me a different
Uh,
direction.
Well,
Because I mean, I hear a lot, I hear a lot of people saying, let's build a pool, let's,
yeah, I know,
but
I know. Maybe,
I-
maybe we need to get a complete picture. What is it going to cost us if we, let's say, maybe we have 4 or 5 years left for that building. I don't know. Nobody knows if we don't put a tow line in. And in the meantime, we go further away from the bluff with our facility. Perhaps rebuild. I think we can rebuild the entire complex for less than 10 million, quite a bit less than 10 million.
right, but you're still waiting for because what's happening is, as you know, it used to look like this and now it looks like this and it's going to look like that. And at some point, when
At
are
some
you
point-
putting good dollars after bad dollars, So, listen, I'm getting us to a point of trying to help us reach a point of making a decision, or no decision. Bruce, you had your hand up?
Yeah, Stan just suggested we could rebuild for less than 10 million. Now, so I'm a little unclear on some of these figures. The problem is you got costs going in and coming out. In other words, it's not just rebuilding something, you got to take something else down. And that's an expensive proposition too. Are we still in the ballpark or does that take us farther out?
So Joe, in the earlier meeting, I guess you were having trouble logging in. Joe did meet with a demo company. We had one demo estimate come in for the main facility. He hasn't had a chance to really review it. It came in late in the day, but the number is in the low $900,000 to just demolish the building.
And
The poor Jeff.
well, let me just try it out of the box concept here. Does that number get to be less if we bring the fire department out and just burn it down and then pay to have any structural steel removed? I'm serious about it. I mean, you're looking at a lot of money when you get people paying to do this kind of stuff. It's expensive.
Yeah, you just can't have the fire come out and burn down a building. Could be asbestos, there's electric,
I think there's going to be some asbestos remediation that has to be done. So
But
that has to be done in a specific way.
So if
listen-
I'm familiar with asbestos remediation, we did it with the school district and it's not cheap. You're talking about adding on to the cost of just taking stuff apart, bringing in specialists certified in moon suits, and that raises the number a lot.
Listen, so it's been no mystery that for the last 5 years, we've been talking about this. We've been waiting for the DEC permits. I've been working with GEI. So nobody else has another plan. Nobody's coming to the table with a real plan that says, because time is not on our side right now.
Well,
Folks.
I compliment you for all the work you put into this, and it's serious work that you've done, and it's a serious proposal.
No, I'm not. That's not what I'm saying, Bruce. I'm just, I know it's a lot of money. I mean, when the bids go out, we all have sticker shock. But yeah, Rebecca, you want to comment?
I think the work that's been done to this point has been very necessary for us as a village to get to see what are those numbers, what are the possibilities, what's allowable by the DEC, what does the public want. I guess my first question is, we had discussed at the work session that if this would be put out to a public vote, or is this something the Board of Trustees are voting on?
So if we still are in consensus that we are going to put the whole package together and go and rebid it and bring this to the public for the June election, that is the avenue I will continue to go.
Okay.
But when I just want to preface this because I think that there are other ways that I haven't been able to develop yet because, we don't have a tennis season. We have said that the Port Jeff tennis programs were not really vital to the operations of the country club. So perhaps the village takes those back and we use that revenue to help pay for a phase 2 project if it comes. But, it's kind of, you're either helping find ways to figure out how we pay for this. And at $147 a household, honestly, right now, I'll pay $147 a year to help, maintain that bluff line. So at least we have something that we can start from to preserve upland. Because I don't think if you don't get that tow line built, you're just going to have a continuous erosion issue upland that you're not going to be able to control. And so the conversation about, how far back do we build, or what, you're just going to keep having that conversation. The building, you're probably going to be at the edge of that bluff line and in DEC territory then within the next year. And we're probably going to need permits to get that steel wall behind the upland building. And that's been part of the problem, is the time it takes us to get these permits in place. So, I think, I don't know. It's not an easy place to come to. By the way, we're not taking any kind of votes tonight or anything like that, but I just wanted to give you updates on the information. And again, I think, go ahead.
In looking at, researching what other communities on Long Island and the Northeast have been doing, and there have been many Herculean efforts like the one being proposed. And the story is the same every time, is that it does not work as well as the community would hope that their efforts would work. And my fear is that, the community invests in something that is rated for 50 years, and maybe it would have lasted the last 50 years, but with climate change and, the storms getting worse and worse, as your slideshows showed. I mean, the storms are getting more severe, more unpredictable, more frequent. And so I don't know, in my assessing sort of where the money is being spent, I'm not sure that any human intervention will really, it might slow it surely will slow the erosion, but is it going to slow the erosion enough to justify these costs, as opposed to what most communities end up doing is retreating from the bluff line entirely with any, structures, tennis courts, the buildings, and saying, that this is where we are a glacial dump of sand and rocks. And this is going to keep happening no matter what we try to do. So, sort of looking at the long term of it, retreating and maybe, building up and out a little bit at the turn, where the turn is right now. And, building on the other side of the road, will that eventually be gone too? Yeah. I mean, I don't know in any of our lifetimes, but just trying to see, where is this? If the village is going to be spending money, what's the most practical way to go about it? That's what I'm measuring. We're trying to weigh right now.
Okay. Is there any public comment?
There is. Please hold.
Hi, Myrna.
Hi, everybody. Margot, your presentation and the visuals were really, really helpful for me to get those aerial views of what's happening. And I know this is going to be a really huge, overwhelming project. I have to agree with what Rebecca just said, that when I've spoken with people in our community, most people do not even know, people that I've spoken to are not even aware of what's really happening with the bluff. They'll go, what? And they're not members and they don't really go up there. They may use the beach, but they're really not tuned into what's happening. And so I'm hoping that, that this message gets out before any types of bids and other types of moving forward happens. I think it's important that we have some type of a public hearing on this, presenting the visuals, presenting all sides, presenting what's going to happen in the future. As Stan just said, Rebecca just said, we have no idea what's happening. And this is a really, really huge, huge village issue. So I'm hoping that that you and the board begin to start getting the message out so that it doesn't hit us all in the spring or before any type of bond issue, that we have to let our residents know what's happening and what we're up against. But I thank you all for your concern, and the pictures are absolutely devastating, and I go there and I see them myself. And so I hope that all of us working together can come up with the right solution. Thank you. I also have some other comments based on what some other things that were said, so I'd like to speak now. And one was, first of all,